This meeting is being recorded.
If that doesn't make you paranoid enough, nothing will. Good evening, everyone. My name is John Haslam. I direct our Center for Teaching and Learning, and I really want to thank you for coming out tonight, braving the wet weather that we've had all day and into the evening to come join us tonight. We're going to have a chance to talk with Adrian Sotelo, who's in the spotlight there. I met Adrian in the, this is going to be funny, Adrian, in the fall of 2015. Gosh, where did 7 years go? I don't know. But at any rate, yeah, Adrian was the first year in one of my classes. And about a third of the way through the term, I noticed Adrian doing something unusual. I had broken up students into pairs to work on papers together, to partner. And Adrian didn't know it, but I did. He had been paired with sort of a difficult student who wasn't really very engaged in the class and who had not made a ton of progress on his paper. And as the groups were finishing up, I looked around and I noticed that Adrian was still very busily working with his partner. So I decided I'd wait a little while, and so I did. And then I looked back over and Adrian was still working very busily with his partner. And I thought, there's something extraordinary about this young man. The attention he was paying, the responsiveness that he was eliciting from the student with whom he was working. And so I thought I needed to talk to Adrian after class because I thought I was seeing a student who was very interested in other people and who really enjoyed working with and helping others. And so we talked after class. Some of the things we talked about made Adrian go wide-eyed. I talked about things like becoming a writing tutor. And he's like, what? Writing tutor? And needing to take classes to get ready to do it. But after we talked, Adrian thought it was a good idea. And so he took another class with me in the winter, and then took teaching writing in the spring. Back then, teaching writing was a writing intensive course. Adrian, our curriculum has since changed. So students write probably 2/3 of what you wrote, but I think students in the class at that time, in addition to the reading, in addition to the teaching, I think they wrote about 150 pages of text for formal evaluation. And so we really worked you hard. But by the end of that term, I knew I had a really good potential tutor. And so we hired Adrian at the end of that term. He started in the fall. Over the course of his time here at Knox, he worked, yes, in AV, became a writing tutor, worked for us, decided he wanted to take a major in Spanish. He put together an independent minor in Composition and Rhetoric, decided that for his senior year, he was going to undertake honors in Composition and Rhetoric. And I remember many late nights in the CTL talking with Adrian, who worked on his project until the night before it was due. I knew that going into the defense that he had to be absolutely exhausted out of his mind. And even so, he went through what was about a 2.5-hour exam and did just fabulously. There was not a question that Adrian did not answer, and answered all of the questions well. So we ended up having a really nice conversation about Adrian's work. When he graduated from Knox, Adrian had an opportunity to go to the University of New Mexico and begin. You were going to start studying composition and rhetoric, weren't you? And then decided, hold on, right. I've spent a lot of time in classrooms. I want to make some money. I want to do what he's always done, which is to help other people. And he got involved right away, working in his hometown in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Currently, Adrian, no, not Albuquerque.
Santa Fe.
Santa Fe. Okay.
You were close, you're about an hour away, but you were close.
All right, just an hour off. Not bad for me. But at any rate, Adrian now works as the site coordinator. I want to get this right. The Communities in Schools of New Mexico program at Capitol High School. Adrian, thank you very much for joining us tonight. I really appreciate it. And I'm looking forward to hearing what you've been doing since you left Knox. And I think the students who are joining us tonight will probably have a good time learning about your experience here at Knox, your journey into professional life, and then especially about your work now. So thank you again for joining us, Adrian, and we'll look forward to talking to you a little bit more at the conclusion of our proceedings tonight. Go ahead, Adrian. Thank you.
Thank you, John. It's so great to be here, virtually, of course. But seeing SMAC, even the renovated SMAC, makes me feel some type of way. I spent a lot of time in that building, so brings back a lot of memories. And John, thank you for putting this together. Kelly, thank you for sending all the invites. I know it must have been a lot of work. So my name is Adrian Sotelo. I'm the site coordinator with communities and schools of New Mexico at Capitol High School. Right now, I am focusing on working with sophomores, so 10th graders, and specifically newcomers. And these students are students that have arrived from Latin America, Mexico, El Salvador, Honduras mainly, and helping them get used to living the American dream in the United States, which sometimes we think about the American dream very theoretically, but in practice, it's a very difficult thing to live. And so one of the most difficult parts about it is the language acquisition, right? And so just trying to find supports for them there. My journey to Knox, I'm gonna try and go in order here. So I graduated from Capitol High School, from the school I work in now, in 2015. And I was I was a very involved student. I did a little bit of everything. And one of those things was I joined the Simon Scholars Program. And it's a scholarship program here in town, college mentoring and providing tutoring and providing resources, like applying to FAFSA and applying to scholarships and applying for colleges for low-income communities. And so I remember once one of the ladies that worked there, her title was College Transition Specialist. And so she put together a list for me that she thought would be of schools that she thought would be a good fit for me. And I think Knox was in like the top 3. And so as a senior with heavy senioritis, I researched like the top 4, and Knox was like the one that really captured my attention. And after I applied, I got in and I got a pretty good aid package. And so I was like, all right, here we go. We're going to Galesburg, Illinois for 4 years. And so that's really how I ended up at Knox. It wasn't necessarily like this magical experience about how I ended up there. I do remember getting my acceptance letter and being, very proud of myself, and my family was too. And just knowing that my dream of going out of state for college is finally becoming a reality, right? And I didn't totally capture what that meant in that moment. I think after graduating from Knox in 2019, I fully understood what that meant. So it took a few years, but I wouldn't trade it for the world. My freshman year, my very first class was with John. It was in the what's that little place called? The Wilson House. Is that still a thing? I'm pretty sure that's still a thing.
Sure.
The Wilson House. Yeah, of course it is. It was at the Wilson House, and it was CTL 100, I believe. So we were doing, learning about essay types and how to adapt to college writing. And I remember that my very first assignment for John's class, my very first college assignment was a big fat F. And I like to tell the story a lot because it completely changed what I thought about writing in college and what I thought about thinking in college and what it meant to express yourself. And so, that obviously didn't discourage me in any way. I went to John and I talked to him, and John gave me a lot of really good feedback. And if you've ever been in John's classes, you know that once he proofreads your paper, he's really going to proofread that thing, and he's going to give you so many comments and super helpful comments. And so slowly but surely, winter term came around and I took another class with him. And then I took teaching writing, what was that, 202? And that was a great class. And honestly, it sounds a little unfair that these kids aren't doing as much work as we did. Because man, we worked hard in that class. And but I wouldn't trade it for anything because I learned so much. And I still have the book. And so I started gathering these experiences, right, about writing. And when I was in high school, I wasn't told you're a great writer, but I was told that I had some talent around it, and that I expressed myself well, and that I had good writing skills. And so going into college, I thought that I wanted to do political science. I wanted to go into politics. And I took one political science class, and it completely ruined it for me. And it was just not my thing. I did not like it. And And so then I started getting involved with John and the CTL and the writing classes, and one thing led to another, and I became a writing tutor, and eventually the writing tutor captain, I was making the schedule and doing sort of the administrative stuff around writing tutoring, which was a lot of fun, but I always enjoyed just being able to focus on the tutoring. That was the best part about it. Um, and so I worked in AV. That was always a fun time. I loved working with projectors and helping teachers that all they needed to do was switch the input, and it was so easy to me, but to them it was like rocket science. So it always felt great to be able to get up and just fix it and feel good about my job, right? That I was learning something really valuable. And like John mentioned, I undertook an honors project, and I worked around the question about qualitative literacy. So how simplified, how did students become so good at math, essentially? And so I drew from a pool of math majors, physics, chemistry, and math, and I asked them super-ended questions about what was your experience like growing up around math? Were you always good at it? What did your parents do? How was your experience in math classes in elementary school, in high school, in college? Why did you come to this experience? And so at the end of the project, we figured out that there was 5 mechanisms, and that's what we called it, that sort of fostered this interest and this proficiency in math. And I couldn't tell you the 5 off the top of my head. It's been a while. But I figured out that it really did matter to have those type of math positive experiences when you were a kid, so that it could help you be math proficient or simply enjoy math or be good at it. And something I remember very distinctly is one of the students told me that him and his family, his dad was a math professor, and they used to sit at the kitchen table, and they figured out once whether you could put a zip line on the Grand Canyon, and they figured out that you could. They like got it to like the most specific details, right? And I was like, when I was sitting at a kitchen table with my family, we were talking about like, how are you going to pay the light bill next month, right? We're not figuring out how you're going to zip line down the Grand Canyon. And so that to me was really surprising, that students had these types of experiences growing up. And all of this stemmed from, whether you got it or not, that math was not my thing. I was never good at math. I mean, it goes in this year and comes out the other, and I was never something that discouraged me. I just understood that I wasn't good at it, and I was good at other things. That was just one of my weaknesses. Um, and so that was really fun. It was hard. It was fun. It was challenging. It was frustrating. I learned a lot, and I couldn't have asked for a better mentor in John, because he was patient with me, and he let me take the project wherever I saw fit, right? And he just kept me in my lane. And so that was really fun. I also published, because of my work as a writing tutor, a piece called Tutoring Advanced Learners in the Dangling Modifier. I forget what issue it was. And it was around an experience I had with a Vietnamese student. I think he was from Vietnam. And he came up to me with a paper, and we were looking over, and I think his question was, what makes a leader a good leader? And that question in and of itself is super difficult, so vague, and you can take it whichever way you want. And so his writing was excellent, good grammar, good structure, organization was great, sentence structure was great. And so I struggled to find things to help him with. And so that's sort of where I took that article, and I'm sure John has the link to it somewhere if you're interested in reading it. That was a lot of fun. And so, like John very well said, I love helping people. That's something that makes me feel satisfied on a day-to-day basis. And 7 years, John, it did go by super quickly. And so we think about, I think about this year alone. When we started in August, and it's essentially already May, and the days just go by so quickly. And so I'm just happy that I'm spending time working with communities and schools of New Mexico here at Capitol, the school that I graduated from, with newcomers, helping them realize a dream that's very difficult. And so I started with communities in schools in what was it, February of 2020. And as you all know, the pandemic hit March 2020. So I got 1.5 weeks of full time inside of the school, and all of a sudden we were all sent home. And so I had to learn a job that takes one-on-one relationships the core of our work is the relationships we have with our students, and taking that away from our work was very difficult to adapt to. And so oftentimes I felt like I had more of a relationship with my phone than I did with the actual students, because they weren't answering, they'd ignore, they wouldn't come to tutoring. Parents would be so stressed out that the last thing they want to do is talk to someone about their kids' grades. And so that was a very hard time. And during the pandemic, a lot of our families lost their jobs, and Capitol High School is situated on the south side of town. And so we have a lot of the low-income families over here. And so a lot of these families working in the restaurant industry, working in construction, working in jobs that were shut down because there were so many people around that the spread of the virus could literally kill people. And so we got a bunch of money, or our marketing person raised a lot of money. And luckily enough, Santa Fe is a rich town. There's a lot of resources here. People often retire in Santa Fe. And so you've got a lot of wealthy people that want to donate. And so we had a lot of money, and because I didn't have a caseload yet, because I was so new, and because the organization I work for, I don't want to say it this way, but I'm going to say it this way, sort of took advantage of the fact that I was bilingual. They threw me in, and they're like, okay, Adrian, here's 50 families that need help paying their rent and paying their bills and buying food. Go help them, go figure it out. And so, there was a structure for me to do that, but it was very overwhelming, because having to hear the stories of our landlord is trying to kick us out. We don't have enough food. Our light was, our light bill is $1,200, and it's never gotten that high. We don't have a job. We don't have income coming in. Our kids are at home. They're not going to school. So it was just super stressful to be there. But having the chance to say, hey, your $1,500 rent bill is getting covered, you'll be good for the next month, was it was great to just be able to say that, right? And for a family to come to you and say, I got you, don't worry, everything's going to be okay. And to literally hear them taking a gasp of air and just feeling a weight lifted off their shoulders made my stress and my job feel worth it. And I mean, I can't not say it. I was super blessed to continue having a job over the pandemic, that I could sit comfortably in my home in pajamas with my dog next to me, doing the work I was meant to do. And so that was a lot of fun, stressful fun. And then April 2021, we all came back to school. And so the real work started, right? Building relationships from the ground. And even though I learned the job in a different way, I still felt really supported from the folks here at CIS, because there's a lot of veterans here, people that have been with the organization for more than 8 years. And one of my colleagues, Torres, he's been with CIS for a while now, and so he's taught me so much. And he's taught me a lot of the way, because he used to work with the youth shelters, and he's worked with a lot of high-risk, high-need students. And so a lot of the strategies that he used, I implemented into my work, and it's been very successful. And so last year was, honestly, it was a blur. Sometimes I don't even count last year, because it was such a difficult year that students failed classes and they had to recover credits now. And we're just like, all right, we're starting from scratch this year. And so I think a lot of students hit the ground running this year, and graduation rates are up, and success rates are up, and that's a lot of fun to witness. And so start of the what year are we in? 2021, 2022 school year, we started in person, which is exactly what I wanted. I was tired of sitting at home and working on my computer. My eyesight got terrible. I mean, I'm squinting now because I can barely see the screen. And so I was tasked with running a few things. The first one was the after-school tutoring program, and I also run a lunchtime language group, and I run we call it XY Zone Boys group with my colleague Sente, and I case manage around 35 students every year, and I try for those 35 students to be all newcomers. And so tutoring, that's my baby this year. I love staying late every Tuesday and Thursday, and we're getting anywhere around like 20 to 30 students every afternoon seeking help on their homework assignments. And something that I noticed was that the newcomer students needed help with math, needed help with English, needed help with their science, but all we had was volunteer tutors that were white, older people, and that didn't speak the language. And so if I wanted to make my tutoring program a little bit more inclusive and a little more effective, I had to look elsewhere. And so I put myself in their situation and said, if I was a newcomer, what would I want? You know, and I was like, oh, this is exactly what I want. I want someone that's young. I want someone that's bilingual, that can speak my language, and I want someone that looks like me to be teaching me how to find the area of, or a squared plus b squared equals c squared or whatever, right? The Pythagorean theorem. And to them, that's not relevant. They're coming from countries where they're seeking asylum because of violence and war and drugs, and they couldn't care less about Don Juan de Oñate and New Mexico history. They really just don't. It's just not relevant to them, right? And so I think that I could meet them in the middle and find a tutor that could relate to them and look like them and speak like them, so that they could find success. And that's been very successful for me. And I can speak about one of my case managed students. His name is, give him a fake name here. His name is James. He's from Guatemala, and he came over to this country, and he first lived in Hawaii for 2 years and hated it. I mean, who hates Hawaii, right? But he hated Hawaii, and so he came to New Mexico, and he started living with his auntie and his cousin. And his cousin was already on my caseload, and his cousin told me one day, hey, I have my cousin, he just arrived and he needs some help. And so he joined my language group once, and in the language group, it's super conversational. I don't give assignments. Obviously, I'm not an English teacher, but we just have conversations in English. I always say, if I want to learn Italian, I'll go to Italy and surround myself with the language. And that's exactly what we do and in this group. And I give them incentives all the time. I mean, I have a Panera gift card in my drawer I'm going to use next week, because food and money, best thing to incentivize kids with. And so Bradley, he started coming to the meetings, and he was doing well. And then, you know, right before Christmas break this year, he was about to drop out. He was done. He didn't want to be here anymore. He was tired of having to work harder than everybody else to get his education. And some way, somehow, the counselor and I would just sat down with him with his auntie, and thank God for his auntie, because his auntie advocated for him very much. And you know, we sat together and we talked that it was possible, that he needed to work hard, and that it wasn't going to be easy, but that it was going to be worth it. And so he needed to. We have something called end of course exams, and students that didn't pass a course in a previous semester or previous year, they can take the exam and study for it, and they can get the credit by exam. And so this student, he had, I think he failed. He needed 5 math credits or something like that to be able to graduate. And in the span of, like, I think 4 or 5 months, he worked every Tuesday, every Wednesday, and every Thursday for 1.5 hours every week for 6 months, working with a bilingual math tutor to figure out every single question. And I can say, as of 4/20 today, he's going to graduate this semester. And that's when and I'm getting chills just thinking about it, because he's such a smart kid, and I know that he's going to be great. And his goal is to bring his family over from Guatemala, and he wants to bring his girlfriend from Guatemala, and he just wants to live a very successful life here. And that's what living the American dream is all about, right? And it wasn't easy for him, and it was the most difficult thing he's ever done, but he's getting there. And we have another program called the Carson Honor Society, and this is a space for us site coordinators. It's actually 4 of us here at Capital, and we each get to nominate one of our seniors, and a senior that shows perseverance, that shows determination, and that shows a grit to be successful, right, and to graduate from college and from high school. Sorry, and he was accepted, and so he's gonna get a $2,500 check at the end of the year. And I mean, that's life-changing money for someone like him, you know. And I'm just very proud that I got to be there for that. That I got to be a very small part in his success. And that's one of the reasons why I love my job, because I get to be a part of that success, right? And I get to see people happy. And so, I lost my train of thought here. So case managing 35 families a year. I get to work one-on-one with them on just addressing their needs and seeing what's how can I help them be successful. And our whole motto is surrounding students with a community of support so they can what's the motto? So they can succeed in life and graduate from high school or something like that. And don't tell my boss I don't know it verbatim. And I and so that's, I mean, we provide the basic needs. Next to me, I have a pantry with a bunch of food in it. I have hygiene products, you know, shampoo, conditioner, toothbrush, toothpaste, tampons, pads, I mean, trash bags, you know, soda, snacks, you know, the works, right? I have school supplies in the cabinet back there. I have my Cowboys helmet on top. I put it on so John could see it. And so yeah, you know, we take a look at the whole student so that we can support them so that they can stay in school, focus on school, and graduate. And now we're taking on a new challenge here after the fallout of the Afghanistan war. We are finally getting Afghan families here in Santa Fe, and we have just as of, I don't know, a month, maybe a month and a half, we got one family here in Santa Fe that ended up at Capitol. It's a family of 7, I believe. 3 of them are here at Capitol, and thankfully, I was able, since I'm running the tutoring program, I was able to, in partnership with the admin team, find a tutor that is helping them with the language acquisition. So they meet in my office Tuesdays and Thursdays. They work on counting money. They work on the calendar, because I think the calendar is different in Afghanistan, and so just getting them used to the very basic things that we take for granted in this country, right? And so it's funny, I was up to them and they were counting money. I was like, get the Benjamins, that's where the value's at. And they just started laughing, right? Because, you want some money, you want to get the Benjamins. And so I think that this job has given me a lot to look forward to, has given me a lot to think about in terms of what's next for me. And oftentimes there's students in here that say, that I ask them, hey, you should think about therapy, right? I think it'll be great for you, counseling. And you don't necessarily need to be, there's a stereotype out there that you need to be crazy to go to therapy. And so I always say we need doctors for our eyes, right? And we need doctors for our heart, and we need doctors for, I don't know, our feet, right? So everybody should have a doctor for their mind. And so they're like, yeah, Adrian, but I don't need a therapist. You're my therapist. And I was like, don't be saying that in public, because I don't have a license here. You can get me in trouble. And so that's sort of giving me something to think about, right? What's next for me here? And I'm not sure if social work is what's next for me. I'm not sure if counseling is what is next for me. But I know that helping people is one of the values that I'm gonna keep close to me, so that I can continue making an impact. And I'm just, I'm excited for what's ahead. Next year, I'm working with juniors, and I'm continuing working with newcomers. And next year, I am probably going to continue with the tutoring program and maybe take on an internship program in the afternoon. So my plate is going to be very, very full. But I always say, what I don't get to today, I'll get to tomorrow. And that's sort of been my motto for the last couple months. And so, no, I mean, I could go on and on and on and on, small details about my work, but this is really at the center. And I like to say that relationships are at the center of my work. And just today, I was sitting here in my office, and I often say that I feel like I'm a McDonald's drive-through here, because it's just students coming in and out every single time. And I've gotten in trouble before, right? The librarian messaging our principal saying, hey, there's too many kids in Adrian's office. And I'm like, isn't that my job, though? Talking to them and making sure they feel welcome and making sure they have everything they need. And so I remember going to the CTL a lot of the times, and there was a line to speak to you, John, because you would take the time to sit down and talk to every single one of the students that came by your office. And believe it or not, that makes a difference in someone's day. It makes a difference because you feel heard, you feel accepted, and you feel like there's someone there that genuinely cares about what you're going through. And so even though I have 50 emails I need to respond to, I still sit here and listen to what they have to say and try and find practical and solution-based conversations for them. And so, most of the time it's boy drama and, things that you're like, all right, take care of yourself. I'm like, don't let a boy treat you like that or whatever. But a lot of the times it is really, heavy problems that are going on at home and things that prevent them from being successful. And I get to meet different students every day. I mean, Capitol is bigger than Knox, and so no faces familiar. I always see someone new, and I meet someone that's different. And the mask did a whole thing for me, because I've met one person like 20 times already, and they're like, yeah, Adrian, we already met. And I was like, I'm sorry, it's the mask. I don't know what to tell you. And so I love my job because every day is different. Every day there's different fires to put out. And every day I'm working on those problem solving skills, and I'm working on my critical thinking skills, and I'm on my toes every day, and that keeps this job exciting. It's not stale. And so I'm blanking. Any questions?
Does anybody have a question? Hey, thank you, Adrian.
Of course.
It's great to hear you speaking about your work with such passion. I feel tremendous pride in you after listening to you. Does anybody have a question? I'm going to play Oprah Winfrey with the microphone. Anybody? Questions?
In the chat,
Okay.
how did your honors help you in your career, in your education, in your career?
Chuchita, I'm sorry if I'm butchering your name. So how did my honors help you in my life or career? One very obvious way that it helped me is it improved my writing skills drastically. I mean, I feel like I'm a much better writer for it. And but really, I think that my honors really helped me see that no person's background is the same. And being in social work, you get a little bit of insight into that nobody's experience is the same, and you shouldn't assume or expect the same performance from a student just because another one right beside them is doing well. And so I like to take a very individualized approach when I work with students, right? And I expect all my students to be at tutoring, because that's the support that we have. But I also understand that some students can't spend an hour and a half on Tuesday and Thursday at school, after school, because they need to work, right? Because they have absent parents, because they need to pay the bills, because they need to help mom care for children, they need to cook dinner. And so I like to be understanding, and again, I like to see that what we see in a person. There's a saying in Spanish, whoever speaks Spanish in here will understand, and caras vemos, corazones no sabemos, which means we see people's faces, but we don't know their hearts. And so I always try to keep that in my mind, right? And if I wouldn't have done my honors project, I wouldn't have known that this math major figured out how to put a zip line in the Grand Canyon when he was 8 years old at the dinner table. I had to ask him that, and I had to frame the conversation around that. And so that's really what it taught me, and in my career in social work, and that you need to look at the student for who they are, the unique person that they are, and not try and put them into a mold necessarily. So good question. Loved it.
Do we have any other questions? I've got one for you, Adrian, maybe more than one. You mentioned that you see a family, you're working with a family from Afghanistan, and it kind of boggles my mind to think that with the United States withdrawal from Afghanistan just a few months ago, that there are already people finding their way to you in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and you're providing support for them. And so I'm kind of wondering, one, how does a family get all the way from Afghanistan to Santa Fe, and how do you respond when you see global events having an immediate influence on your workflow?
Good questions, John. So I know a very general way of how they got to the country, and I can only speak about the family that got here. And so the Afghanistan withdrawal was November, right? October, November, sometime in the fall. And so this family was transported to an Air Force base in Virginia first. They spent a couple months, or like one or 2 months there. and then they were transported to another Air Force base in Georgia, and they spent like another month there, and then they're transported to another Air Force base somewhere in the Midwest. I'm not exactly sure where. And then the US government contracted Lutheran Family Services, which is a nationwide organization, and Lutheran Family Services has an office here in Albuquerque. And so then the nationwide corporate office found all of its affiliates and said, and you're getting one, and you're getting one, and you're getting one, and you're getting one. And so we ended up with this family of 7. And they were in Albuquerque first, and then Lutheran Family Services of Albuquerque sent them to Santa Fe. And there was the tutor actually that's working with them now is their sponsor family. So these Afghans stayed in this tutor's house for, I don't know, I think it was like about a month or something, and then they found an apartment for themselves right across from Capitol High. And so, you know, it was a lot about you know, taking them to the grocery store and showing them where it was and what are the customs here, you know, and you know how to take the bus because they don't have driver's licenses, they can't drive here, and they don't have the money for a car. And so I know that Lutheran Family Services has a whole system, financial system set up for them, so that they have like a little fund for them. And so after, I think it was like after 90 days, whatever isn't spent on furniture and, you know, some of the basic needs and food and putting down payments for an apartment, they get some of that money back. And so, you know, they're taken care of, but at the same time, and, you know, I sound like a broken record here, they're also living this American dream, whether they like it or not, whether they wanted to live this American dream or not, they're still living it. And so your second question, how does it affect our workflow? I mean, it hasn't been easy. You know, if it's hard for us if it's hard for them to communicate with us, it's that much harder for us to communicate with them. And so thank God for technology. I mean, Google Translate is my best friend right now. Communicating with these 3 Afghan students. They're wonderful, by the way. Wow, they're so generous and they're so nice. And I was in here once, and one of the students, I was standing just observing their tutoring session, and he looked at me and he got up immediately and he offered me the chair. And I was like, no, dude, my chair's over here. Go ahead, sit down. It's okay. Like, this is your time. Learn. And so I think that the programs that we've already established are helpful for them, but we just sort of need to refine some of the ways that we're approaching it. And so, to me, it made no sense to have these students drop in to our tutoring sessions because there's no tutor that can work with them. Because the language barrier is there. And so myself and the volunteer coordinator have to go out and find someone. And luckily he was right there that wanted to take on that challenge and help them with the language acquisition. And so, and 2 of my colleagues, Maria and Erika, they're actually case managing the family. And so they've been in contact with the parents, you know, using Google Translate, of course, to see what their needs are. And we take them food, a bag of food every Friday. We deliver it to their house. And I believe some emergency funds are coming. And we're throwing, I don't want to say throwing, but we're putting all of the resources that we have already. We're putting them on their plates so that they know they're supported, and that that's what we can do. Fortunately, Lutheran Family Services is very well organized, and so they're being taken care of in a lot of ways. And so whatever we're doing is just supplemental. And you know, I don't think these students ever had like wireless headphones, right? And those things we take them for granted. You know, we see people with AirPods going around, and it's like, oh, he has AirPods, that's cool. But then these students are like, wow, you're gonna give me free wireless headphones? That's insane. Like, yeah, they're for you. And so and something that we take for granted, that we have walls and that we have a building here in school. We have chairs to sit in, we have notebooks to write in, we have, I have snacks to give out for free. And these students were telling us, the Afghan students were telling us that when they were in college, first of all, the girl wasn't able to go to school, just traditionally and politically, and based on their religion, she couldn't get an education. And the 2 other kids, the boys, they were sitting in a destroyed building in class on the ground, and their teacher didn't have enough money to buy a whiteboard, didn't have enough money to buy markers, right? They were learning like they could, right? And so now they come here and they're like, wow, this is like the most magical place on earth. There's a school with desks and markers and pencils. And so one, I was humbled because we complain about like, oh my God, my math teacher gave me too much homework. And these kids are like, oh my God, I have a chair to sit in that math class. And so it just makes you rethink and reframe all of these negative thoughts that you had about your experience here and just how blessed we really are. And so even though it's difficult, I like to think that they're learning and we're learning with them. And so there's I don't feel bad if we're not perfect. I just know that we're trying our best to help them.
So I'm thinking right now about what's going on in the Ukraine and about the millions of people who are leaving Ukraine. I got to think it won't be long till Lutheran Family Services or another organization reaches out to you and says, hey, we have a family or two from the Ukraine. Are you thinking about that already?
We are thinking about that. And that's a question that I've asked Miss Meredith Tilp, who's the one she was a former Capital teacher. And I've asked her that question and she's like, we don't know if we'll get a family until about a week before they arrive. And so I'm expecting them. I'm sure we're going to get a Ukrainian family here soon. I have heard that most Ukrainian refugees already have some contact here in the US, some family, extended family that are able to sponsor them. And so I don't think it's going to be as severe as the refugees from Afghanistan, but I expect someone to be arriving, and it's going to be the same setup, right? We have already established programs that have proven to be successful, so we're going to adapt them a little bit to be able to help them out in that way. And so, yeah, they're coming, and all we can do is prepare for them.
So Adrian, earlier when you were talking, you talked about people coming from South America and Mexico, people who were coming to America and they were coming here to get, I forget exactly how you phrased it, but I think it was something along the lines of their version of the American dream. And so I'm wondering, what is their idea? If you can generalize, I don't know if you can or not, but I'm wondering, when people are coming here and they think they're seeking a dream, an American dream, what does that look like? What does it live like for them?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Good question, John. I mean, the only frame of reference personally that I had was my parents, and coming to the United States meant more money, it meant more job opportunities, it meant a better education for their children, and it meant that their children wouldn't have to live in the poverty and in the violence that they had to live in. And that's exactly what our families expect when they arrive to the US, right? More work, more opportunity, better education. But then they're met with a lot of resistance, right? And I don't mean to get political here, John, but thank God that we no longer have the 40th president up in Capitol Hill, because that was really tough for a lot of our families, coming here. And I had at least 2 or 3 families that were afraid to say something to their landlords, whether there was a leaky pipe or the ceiling was leaking or whatever it was, because they felt like they were going to be ratted out to ICE and be deported, right? And that wasn't going to happen, but nobody can take that fear away from them. And so I think that the American dream is beautiful in theory, and so they come here with this idea that the American dream is going to make their life better. But in reality, the American dream, yes, it does make your life better, but after you've put in years and years of hard work, saving up, and paying rent, and eventually buying a home, and eventually buying a car, and sending your kids to school, and hopefully your kids are they're good kids and they do well in school and they get the grades and they go off to college and they're professionals. And so that's really what I meant by the American dream, that we think of this nation as prosperous, and it is. I mean, it's one of the richest nations on earth, and but it's only a prosperous nation for those that and I might be generalizing a lot here, but it's only a prosperous nation for those that know how to be prosperous in this nation. Not for an undocumented immigrant from El Salvador that only knows how to work in a factory, right? Or only knows landscaping, or only knows how to do construction, or doesn't know, a word of English, And so there's a lot of challenges that aren't talked about when you come to this country, and that's sort of one of the ways that I try to approach conversations with my family, saying, it's not easy. You're on an uphill battle here. But the more you stay here and the more you practice it and the more you work and the more you work hard, the easier it gets. And the pandemic just made it that much harder, right? And so that's really what I mean by the American dream. And if it was hard for our parents, I can't imagine how hard it is for families that are arriving now.
So based on your definition of the American dream, I'm thinking that getting the young people into school is probably a priority for them. For them, the idea of getting, sons, daughters into school, that's something they really want to see.
Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering though, do the young students themselves, do they have that same desire? Do they look at school as a gateway to something more and as a necessity maybe, or is it a luxury or an inconvenience or maybe something else?
That's a hard question, and you're gonna get a crack at this one. It's depending on context. Context matters here, because some students see it as a huge opportunity, but their life circumstances don't allow it to be. Some students have the space for it to be an opportunity, but they see it as an inconvenience. And so a lot of them have decided to drop out and just work, because in their minds, $500 in their pocket is much better than an A in the grade book. And I hear that, and I try to understand that, and no situation is the same. And a little example that I have is there's a student from Guatemala, we'll call him Johnny. And Johnny, his brother's disabled. He has to pay a mortgage in his home country. He needs to pay, we'll call it rent, for a plot of land that his family has done in Guatemala. And so his brother's disabled, has to pay a mortgage, has to pay rent at a plot of land, and he's 16 years old. He's here in Santa Fe by himself. He's living with a cousin, but his cousin essentially takes advantage of him. And he has, I don't know, like, that bathroom at the top of the CTL? That's how much room he has to himself in that house. And so, and he needs to pay rent with the cousin and buy groceries, right? And he needs to pay gas. And so this kid was working, what was it? He was like working from like 3 in the morning to like 7 a.m. And then he was going to school. And then he immediately right after school ended, he needed to be at his second job, was working from about 4 to midnight. And then he was sleeping, trying to do homework and sleeping from midnight to 3 a.m. And then he was back at it the other day. And he was 16 years old and knew very little English and was away from his parents. How do you expect a student to do well in school when he's going through all that, when his parents literally sent him to this country so that he could support them financially? Right? And so he knows that his education is important. He knows that he needs to graduate, but he can't. There's just not enough time in the day for him to do all of that. And so the student ended up dropping out, and he, hopefully he'll be back next year, but who knows, maybe, hopefully. And so to answer your question, John, a lot of them see it as an opportunity. A lot of them see it as an inconvenience. But parents, most of all, want their students to be in school. And often don't know how to approach the conversation with their students, because a lot of the times the students have control over whether they come to school or not, and parents are just super laid back, hands off. They decide whether they want to be here or not. And that's really frustrating, someone that works in school and wants kids to succeed when parents are absent. But yeah, it's really dependent on context and, the unique experiences of that student and what they're going through.
I realize I've been asking all the questions. I should turn to our guests here. We've got a question? Thank you.
You mentioned like connecting with students individually. I guess what are some of your best methods for doing that?
Yeah, sure. That's a good question. Usually since I don't know the student, I usually compliment them for whatever they're wearing on themselves, or whether it's like a sports team on their jacket, or I like their backpack, or I like their hat, or whatever. I just give them a compliment. And so football is big here at Capitol, and so there's a lot of Cowboy fans, and there's a lot of Bronco fans, and so you talk smack to those teams that you don't like, but you also like compliment those students that are wearing your team, right? And so that's one way that I've done it. Another way that I've connected with my students is that we have something called the wellness team here at school, and it's a combination of admin, so all the principals and the counselors and the nurse and our SAT coordinators, which is person that like students with disabilities, and she's the one that helps them come into a plan so they can be successful here. And so a lot of the time, the school staff refers a lot of those students to CIS. And so I always like to say that CIS is the good cops and school administrators are the bad cops. And so I love my job because I get to be a good cop. I get to be their adult friend here on campus. And I always tell them that I always ask the question, do you have an adult here on campus that you trust and you can talk to? Oftentimes they say no. And so I say, I'd like to be that person for you if you let me. And so I always give them my number. I always text them. And I try to find something on their person to connect through. And after a little bit of conversation, I get to know them a little bit more, and we build relationships. The thing about relationships is that they take time. And the one most important piece to anything in this world is consistency. And so I've had a lot of students that I've had a lot of really hard time connecting with, but after 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, almost a whole year of continuously texting them and reaching out to them and talking to their parents and showing them that I'm there for them, they eventually come around and show up. So, a few ways of how I connect with them. And playing football with them on the field, stiff arming them and like tackling them, and they like that type of horseplay, so it's fun.
You're tackling your students?
Yeah. Hey, they started it. They're like, "Oh, we're gonna play tackle football," and I was like, "Okay." so they're okay with it as long as we're safe about it.
I'd lose my job if I did that, right?
Oh yeah, of course. Nobody saw me, thankfully, so I'm not gonna lose my job here.
All right, we've got another question for you, Adrian.
Cool.
Yeah, it's more like a comment. I just wanted to say that thank you so much for like all the work you do. I just wanted to quickly share, like personally, like I come from undocumented parents, and I also have cousins who came from all the way from South America, from Ecuador, and we live in Chicago, right? And I went to a high school where we have a lot of low income students, and I'm a first-gen student also. So all of what you have talked about and all these experiences, like I have people like that I was able to kind of talk to, and I'm just so thankful that you're doing all of this work. It's huge, it's humongous, and I feel inspired, and now I feel more inspired to like be the CTL tutor to help a lot of like these first-gen students. And like I have my younger brother who he goes to Urbana, and he himself is struggling keeping up with his work. Like it's very crazy because like I'm over here being like like a quote unquote amazing student, like top in my class here right at Knox, and he has an academic probation, and it's and it really sucks. But oh yeah, thank you. Yeah, I will. And he himself, I've been like kind of tutoring him, and then I realized, wait, I actually kind of enjoy this tutoring thing, even though he's my brother. And I apply, and now I'm here, my second year at Knox, and hopefully it works out, and it's so much fun. And I just wanted to say thank you so much for doing everything.
Oh, thanks for a comment, and congratulations, you made it. You made it, and you're making a difference. First generation Latina in college, that's huge. So congratulations to you and to your family. And yeah, I'd ask your brother to reach out to Beatriz. She's amazing student and also first generation Latina. So please do. And thanks for your comments. I mean, I think that this work is great, and I'm sure John appreciates you wanting to be a tutor, because definitely meet people that want to help. So thanks for your comments. And what was your name? I didn't catch your name.
Can you hear?
Oh yeah. Sonia Lopez.
Sonia López. Muchas gracias, Sonia.
No, de nada. Muchas gracias.
And just so you know, Beatrice Jimenez above Adrian, she's at the University of Illinois, a doctoral student there. She was said in the chat, ask your brother to seek her out. Beatrice worked in the CTL as well. She'll be presenting 4 weeks from tonight. And if she says she'll help your brother, she will help your brother.
Mhm.
And if you need contact information, just let me.
All right. Any more questions, y'all? John, any more comments?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you.
Give me that. Yeah, so John turned off the mic.
Mm.
Yep, thanks, Sonia. Yeah, so where are you finding your tutors to work with your newcomers? Are you getting like current students at Capital to work with them, or are they people that have gone through your program? How are you doing that?
So I have 2 peer tutors. These are students that they're not bilingual. It's funny the way they came to me. Their teacher's actually a teacher at Capital, and the teacher came up to me. He's like, "Hey, my kid needs something to do after school. Can you please get him on your tutoring program?" And I was like, "Oh, of course." And then I looked up their grades, and they're like straight A's, especially in math. So they're 2 of my peer tutors. For the newcomers specifically, I work with Kate Mitchell, who's our volunteer coordinator, and she has a lot of connections in the city, and so she knew of, what was it, how many do I have? 2, 3, 4, 4 bilingual tutors that come on campus and help our students. And so one of them is the tutors that work with the Afghan students, and 3 of them are bilingual former educators that work with any other newcomer that speaks Spanish as their primary language, and teaching them the English skills. I also one of the ways that I was successful in math when I was in school, and if you remember, it goes in this year and comes out the other, is my sister. She's very, very good at math. And so she's bilingual, she's Latina, and so she's been tutoring for me as well. And she's the one that helped my student, what did I name him? James, I think. She's the one that's helped James pass all of these end of course exams. And she's one of the main reasons she's graduating. And so before this job, I was actually tutor coordinator for the Simon Scholars Program, and so I was a student there, and then I worked for them, and I met a lot of people through that program, and so I compiled a list of the people that I met, and I went through my spreadsheets again, and I sent all of them in mass email, and I said, hey, we're looking for bilingual tutors, volunteer, unfortunately, but it's only a couple hours a week, so are you interested? And a couple of them, they were interested, and they got onboarded, and now they're working for us. And one of them is actually a student at the St. Edward's University in Texas. And so she comes on virtually, but I mean, it's better than not having anybody, right? And so that's sort of how we've approached getting bilingual tutors, and we haven't been awfully, I wouldn't say we're too successful. I mean, I wish we would have gotten more, but it's a work in progress, and that's sort of how we've gone through it. And I'm just really happy and blessed that we have a volunteer coordinator that takes care of all the administrative things, and talking to the district and getting their backgrounds cleared and all that, because you are working with minors, so you need to have all the clearance.
All right, we're working with a dying mic here, but we've got another question for you, Adrian.
Okay.
I wanted to know, it's like, do you interact with teachers often at all? I'm sorry, this probably isn't coming through super well.
No, I heard you.
Oh, perfect. Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
yeah. I'm an ed studies major, so I saw you were talking. I was like, oh, this would be really great to go to. So I was wondering, like, you mentioned.
Oh, you cut out there.
I think the mic died.
Yeah, I think it did. Good question. Yes, I interact with teachers on a daily basis, and just given the population of students I work with, there's a set group of teachers I mainly interact with. There's some teachers, I mean, there's some teachers that I don't even know personally, um, and so yes, I interact with them every day, and a lot of the time it's around student advocacy. It's about how to give the student a chance to continue succeeding in that class. And keep in mind that communities in schools, we work with the high risk, high need students, and so these are students that are traditionally not very good at keeping up with their grades, and their life circumstances don't allow for it. And so, who was I speaking to the other day? I think it was Ms. Birch, and it was around one of our newcomers, and um, teachers don't have the time to sit down and talk to these students about what's going on at home. And so having us knowing the stories that are happening at home and being able to relate, obviously not in detail because we don't want to break confidentiality, but being able to give them a sort of an overview of what's going on at home. And if we can make an exception, right? If we can give the students a little bit more time to turn in a project, and letting teachers know that a student, I just had a student today, actually, he broke his leg. Um, right after spring breaks, and so he hasn't been in school for since spring break, and so he just made it back this day. And so working with his teachers, working with the counselor, working with the principal to see how we can accommodate him here in school so that he can continue making the grade and being successful. um, and so a lot of the time it's also teachers sending us emails saying, hey, can you please check in with Luis because I feel like he's going to drop out, and I feel like his buddy dropped out at the beginning of the year, and please just check in with him. And so there's a lot of tag teaming, there's a lot of emails, and it's a lot about keeping the communication channels open, and knowing that our job isn't about saving people. We can't save anybody. Our job is to support them and to empower them, but not save them, because they are humans and they have their own agency to make their own decisions and to uplift themselves, to do the work, to learn. And our job is just to support them, right? And so you can provide all these channels of support. We can, work together as a team, and but it's up to the student to do the work, right? Because at the end of the day, I'm not going to sit there and like listen to the class and take notes for them and do their homework assignment and turn it in, right? If you're going to do the work, you're going to do the work. If not, then we're going to continue motivating you. And so working with teachers is fun. A lot of the times, we have to address some of the social emotional needs before the academic needs need to be met or can be met. And so a lot of the time it is, we like bump heads sometimes because we want them to be in our offices so that we can talk about what's going on at home, and we can, connect them to resources, whether that's counseling or grief support or anything like that. But that takes time out of the day, right? So that means that we're going to have to pull them from class at some point. And so, it's a lot of pull and give. It's a constant game that we have to keep balancing out. Thanks for the question. And then there's teachers that like we get along really well with, right? And they have no problem with us pulling students from their class. And so, you know, you make those relationships, and if I have a student that I need to pull tomorrow, I'll look at his schedule and say, oh, okay, I'll pull him during 6 because Miss Iglesias, she's cool in pulling students from her class, and so she's, I sort of map my day out that way sometimes.
Adrian, we did find some more batteries. Can you hear me okay now?
I can hear you, yeah.
You have another question?
No, I actually just wanted to say thank you. And thank you for the work you do as well. It's very inspiring to hear about.
Absolutely, thank you.
So Adrian, I've got one last question before I tease you, and we got to say goodbye.
Okay.
But I'm wondering, is there like a next step for you, a next professional step for you, or are you where you need to be for quite a while?
I'm gonna take a sip of water for that one, John. I think I'm going to stick it out at Capitol High for at least another 2 years. I want to finish my cycle. I started out with freshmen at the beginning of my time here, which was remote, and so I want to see my freshman class make it to graduation and graduate, right? And the last thing I want is to pass on my caseload to whoever takes my spot, because that happened to me, and picking up where those people left off was really intimidating. I mean, I lived up to the challenge. It happened, and this person's students graduated. But not just that, I want to be able to support them until they make it to the finish line. And so, I'm thinking about two different things. I either stay with CIS and take on an admin position, which would be field operations director, which would be managing the site coordinators, or I go back to graduate school. And, I think about social work, I think about maybe counseling, or I think about writing and rhetoric, because believe it or not, it's still something that interests me. I don't read too much about it anymore. I usually don't have the time for it, but it's still, it's still something that interests me. I mean, I was going to start graduate school in that subject, and so definitely something that I'm going to look into. And so graduate school or stay with CIS for a little bit. But yeah, I think those are the next steps. Who knows though? Who knows what can happen?
Well, Adrian, I really, just listening to you describe your work and to see the way you smile while you're talking about it, and to hear the degree of specificity with which you know your students and their families, I can tell you are in a really good place. I know you're doing really good and important work with large numbers of people, maybe more than you should be asked to handle. But you're making a big difference in the lives of very many people. I'm just really proud of you and of the work you're doing. And I want to tell you that despite your taste in pro football teams, despite that team with the funny little star on their helmet,
Funny looking star.
that's a little helmet. It looks like it goes on a little head. But despite
I'm a social
that,
worker. I can't afford the big one.
we'll have to get you the pro size, but despite that, Adrian, I love you very much, and I'm just really grateful to have an opportunity to talk to you tonight, and thank you for sharing your expertise with us and our students here in the Knox community. Thanks very much.
Absolutely. Thank you all for having me. This was fun. I hear Kelly yelling in the background.
Oh yeah, we're Red Room is about to start here.
Oh, okay, cool. Good luck.
We're shifting gears. Thank you so much, Adrian. We'll be in
Bye,
touch
all.
tomorrow, buddy.
Absolutely.
Good night.
Take care.
Yeah, thanks for coming.